to restructure it, and rather than asking Gerard Mayo to move on and go finish up his career elsewhere, they find a position for him within the coaching staff, perhaps the front office, because Mike Reese made a suggestion within the article you referenced earlier about him potentially being a candidate to replace Kevin Anderson as the Patriots' new director of player development. I think that has some appeal to it, and we'll see if it has some merit to it as time goes on this offseason. Speaking of the linebacker position, speaking of big offseason moves, fact or fiction, Jeff, this offseason, the Patriots come to terms on new deals with Dante Hightower and Jamie Collins.
That is 100% fact. They absolutely need to do it with Dante Hightower. Saves them huge against the cap. He's scheduled to be just over $8 million on his fifth-year option. So I look at it and I say, all right, here it is. You know, that's an easy cap savings. You sign him to a big, long deal, and you know, it drops his cap hit down to about $4.5, $5 million this year. Saves the Patriots $3 to $5 million, depending on that. So I think that is definitely a fact. As far as Jamie Collins goes, he, of course, being a second-round draft pick, he's scheduled to make just under $1 million this year. Talk about a bargain. So I look at it and I say, you know what? Here it is. They're going to need to get him done, but he's the type of guy that they could definitely franchise in the offseason. So I think Dante Hightower gets done first.
I think they're going to get them both done. Maybe one gets done before the other, and you would have to assume that's Hightower. But I also think that Jamie Collins and his agent are going to have a strong case, of course, to not want to play this season at such a low number. And also the incentive on New England's side is if we get this deal done early, we can save some money, perhaps at the back end of Jamie Collins' contract. And I think in terms of a comparison, you're looking at Bobby Wagner in Seattle, who's also one of the best linebackers in football. His extension was for 4 years, $43 million, $21.9 million guaranteed. So I think that's a baseline to work with when discussing what Hightower and Jamie Collins' potential new deals might look like. Now, it was always discussed as a trio: Hightower, Collins, Chandler Jones. He's a bit more tepid now. People have soured on Chandler Jones just a bit between synthetic marijuana, not showing up in the AFC Championship. So people are not as high. He's kind of come to the back burner of the priority list. Do you believe the Patriots go so far as to trade him this offseason?
You know, if you went back and watched Bill Belichick, A Football Life, there is a very important spot in that where they're sitting around the round table, and it's Bill Belichick and Nick Caserio, Jonathan Kraft and Robert Kraft, and they're talking about Richard Seymour. And they're talking about how they cannot re-sign him and re-sign Vince Wilfork. And they turned around and traded the big-time defensive end to the Oakland Raiders for a first-round draft pick. Right now, I think the Patriots could make the trade and trade Chandler Jones. I personally don't want to see them trade Chandler Jones. I think Chandler Jones is a very talented defensive end. Sure, he had some issues with his showing up shirtless and shoeless to a police station. These things happen. Not to me, not to you, but I guess they do happen. I mean, I've never tried synthetic marijuana. After hearing that, I don't think I want to try synthetic marijuana. I'll stick with the Budweiser. But, you know, here's what I'm sitting at. They can trade him, get some draft capital, not this year, but probably next year. I would say it might be a draft day deal where maybe they get a second-round conditional first for next season. And then you have Jabal Sheard, who they could definitely turn around and re-sign. He fit extremely well in the New England Patriots defense. Rob Ninkovich, now he's not getting any younger, but he still can play pretty well. Then you have Trey Flowers, who basically, remember how great he was in the preseason last year, basically redshirted this year. Geno Grissom, we've talked about Rufus Johnson in the past, so they have some players out there that can move in here and play that 4-3 defensive end, that edge rusher. So they could move Chandler Jones. I'm not going to jump out and say that they're going to move him yet, but definitely a fact that they could move him.
There's definitely young talent in the pipeline at the position. There's also the impending extension of Jabal Sheard, as you mentioned. I also look at Chandler Jones' cap hit this season, under $8 million, so it's quite manageable for the Patriots. I think that's good value for a player of Chandler Jones' caliber. That's why I think they ultimately hold on to him for another season, especially with how much young talent they already have, unloading him to get a first round draft pick, even if there's a veteran player involved in that deal. I just don't think it's the right move. I say hold on to Chandler Jones for at least one more season. Let's see how next season's campaign pans out, and we'll go from there, especially if they do need to create the money to sign Malcolm Butler. Moving on from Chandler Jones makes a lot of sense, but they don't need to rush that decision and make it this offseason. Another decision that doesn't need to be rushed, but might just happen, revolves the quarterback position. Mr. TB12, Tom Brady. Do you believe that the Patriots work out another extension with him before the start of next season?
I don't know if it's before the start of next season, but I do believe an extension comes at some point next season. Brady has always revisited his contract, usually with about 2 years left to go on the contract, and he'll have 16 and 17 as 2 years left. They could stand to save a little bit of cap money by signing him to an extension. He's always taken below market value. They could use the ability that, hey, we got a second year. Why turn around and sign a 40-year-old quarterback when his contract ends in 2017 to a 3-year deal? What happens if he just falls apart next year? Now, I don't believe Tom Brady's going to fall apart next year. I mean, the guy was already out on Facebook saying two-a-days have begun with a fine-ass watch.
Yeah, that was
You see
pretty
that
nice.
watch?
Gonna have to find a way to get one of those.
Yeah, well, I don't make what Tom Brady makes, so you know what? Inside the hoodie,
So
people.
you're not going to get that for my birthday? I can't expect that.
No. And I tried to win Powerball not too long ago. It didn't work. But you know what? We could get to these watches. I think it was a Tag Heuser watch. Tag Heuser. Here's the thing. Inside the hoodie, free publicity. Get us a couple watches. We'll be good to go. But I don't expect them to rush into it. But I do believe that they could extend him halfway through next season if he is playing as well as he is. And if he's not, you don't extend him, and maybe it reigns over to Jimmy Garoppolo. But I'm one of those believers that believes that Tom Brady is going to play to 42, 43 years old and play at a high level.
Yeah, I'm with you on that belief. Just looking at how much he puts into his craft, it's a year-round grind for Tom Brady. And fortunately, he doesn't see it that way. He seems to enjoy doing this because of the benefits and the rewards that he's reaping out on the football field. He's better now than he was 4 years ago, which is awfully impressive and quite rare to say of a player at his age. So, listen, they came to an extension close to the beginning of the season last time around. I could see it happening again this time, but I do think what you just said would be the right approach from New England side of things, and that is to wait and just see how the year progresses. It likely will confirm that Tom Brady is still one of the best quarterbacks in football, and for a stretch last season, he was the best quarterback in football. Obviously, Cam Newton ended up surpassing him, and there's multiple factors in that from both a Carolina and New England perspective, but Cam's going to win the MVP, deservedly so. Tom Brady, however, was right in the thick of that discussion for quite some time, and at one point leading it, and he'll probably find himself right back in that conversation next season. So by all means, if you're New England, do the smart thing and wait it out, but it's probably not going to be too surprising to see the level of play Tom Brady's at next season. That's going to move us to our next segment, Jeff. State your case. We're going to start with JoJo LaFell. State your case for him being back with New England or having to find work elsewhere.
This man is finding work elsewhere. Listen, JoJo, thanks for the ring. Thanks for the touchdown in the Super Bowl. But you know what? You caught lightning in a bottle one year. This year, you just came back. You weren't on the same page. It was like you just gave up. You turned back into the wide receiver that was in Carolina, inconsistent, a 35 to 45 catch a season type of guy. See you later. We don't need your big money this year. Not that it's huge money, but you could save about $3 million by letting him go. Keyshawn Martin comes in, did just as well as you. LaFell, thanks a lot. You were a great player, for 1 year for the Patriots, but you just don't cut it. See you later.
Brandon LaFell has a cap hit of $3.6 million next season, which is a steal of a deal for New England. And to be honest, Jeff, I don't buy the notion that his first campaign in New England was the outlier. I could if he was healthy last season and just not producing, but I really don't think that we even know the extent of how injured he was. Bill Belichick at multiple junctures complimented LaFell for being one of those players, gutting it out and playing through the injuries, not to mention the fact that his routes take longer to develop and the offensive line simply couldn't afford that amount of time for receivers to get open this season. So those two factors, with injuries being the more significant of the two, culminated in Brandon LaFell being irrelevant this season. And while it was very unfortunate to see, and they really could have used the dynamic he brings to the offense, it didn't happen. However, he has familiarity with the offense. He's shown how productive he can be. Like I just said, he brings a new dimension to the passing attack. He's also a very good blocker, which we know Bill Belichick values out of the receiver position. I think there's more reasons to bring him back than not. I know they need speed on the perimeter. I know last season was a disappointment for LaFell, but looking at how he performed his first season, I think that if he's healthy at that rate, it's worth bringing him back rather than trying to once again start from scratch. That moves us to a fellow receiver of Brandon LaFell's, Danny Amendola. State your case, Jeff. Is he back? Is he not? They restructuring? What you thinking?
Restructure. Bring this guy back. Danny Amendola is just too valuable to this team. Listen, he's never going to put up the numbers that a Wes Welker did or that a Julian Edelman does, but he has such a fine role on this team, does such a great job in that slot receiver. And as you saw with when Julian Edelman got injured, he's not exactly Julian Edelman, but he still makes plays when plays need to be made. 2014, they don't win the Super Bowl without him. Last year, this past year, he was stepped up when he had to step up. 65 catches this year, really came on. He does have a tendency to get hurt from now and again. The knee injury really affected him, but a phenomenal punt returner, keeping Julian Edelman away from returning punts and staying healthy. And then when you look at him, you say, you know what? This is a guy that just gets it. He's on the same page as Tom Brady. I really like him. And you look at what he did in the AFC Championship game on 3rd and 11. He almost gets a first down, allows the Patriots to go for it on 4th and 1. He can make plays. I like Danny Amendola. Keep number 80 on the Patriots.
Jeff, I agree. He's got a $6.8 million cap hit coming this season, slightly more than Gronk. It's more than Julian Edelman, so he's obviously going to have to restructure that to stay, but I do think it's worth it. He's also an insurance policy for Julian Edelman. I know they play different positions, but at the same time, it is nice to have Amendola there in case of an injury to JE11. And he was the spark plug time and time again. The example that comes to the forefront of my mind is at MetLife Stadium against the Giants, where the offense is anemic in part to the offensive line. A little bit of foreshadowing that game, I guess. And what does Amendola do? He takes the punt and nearly returns it to the house, if not for Daron Harmon tripping over him in one of the more embarrassing moments that I've seen in football, period. But just a classic example of Danny Amendola being the catalyst for this Patriots offense team, providing that spark that they needed, and he did it time and time again throughout the season. He's really proven his value to this offense. He's come a long way since his first season when people were dogging him for the contract and assuming that he was going to be Wes Welker's replacement and viewing him as not living up to that expectation. So I'm proud of Danny Amendola and all that he's accomplished. I'd love to see him continue to accomplish more in New England, working closely alongside TB12. One player, Jeff, who I don't think will get that same luxury is Marcus Cannon, but let's hear what you have to say about it.
I look at Marcus Cannon, and I wonder about him. Listen, he's a decent swing tackle. He had a horrible game against the Denver Broncos. It's come out that they were tipping the snap a little bit. But he's a solid third tackle. But no, I don't believe he's back next year. They might bring him back for camp because his contract is relatively small. They might bring him back for camp just to make sure that a Nate Soldier doesn't get injured again, or Sebastian Vollmer doesn't get injured again. So they could bring him back there. But I still think Le'Adrian Waddle is a guy to watch right here. I think he's a better tackle than Marcus Cannon. He could be a restricted free agent if the Patriots tendered him enough. They would need to, of course, tender him at the first-round level, which I don't have the numbers in front of me, to keep him as a restricted free agent because he was an undrafted player. But I look at him, and I like what he brings. He's got size. He's played in the NFL. He has starts for the Lions, and I think he's better than Marcus Cannon. He's also talked about how he wants to be back with the New England Patriots, enjoyed his time here. So I'm looking at it, and I say bye-bye Cannon, hello Waddle.
If the Patriots part ways with Marcus Cannon, they can save $3.6 million.
Gone.
Translation, bye-bye Marcus, pack your bags. So he's out of there. I know that he was also not 100%, got hurt in the Colts game. But, hey, Bill Belichick always says the best ability is availability. And while he was out there, he wasn't quite able to stay healthy. From the moment they needed him, he goes down in the first series against Indianapolis right after the Nate Solder injury. So Marcus Cannon, in my opinion, it's a layup that he's gone. Le'Adrian Waddle fits what I envision the Patriots doing, Jeff, and that is signing a veteran tackle and then drafting a young right tackle, perhaps the heir apparent to Sebastian Vollmer. So that's the direction I see New England moving in. Le'Adrian Waddle's familiarity with the offense already gives him a leg up on the competition, so I do think that he's a strong contender, especially when you factor in that he's not likely to cost them all that much to return, and then they can look to the draft for a right tackle. Another player, Jeff, who they acquired mid-season and turned out to be a stud for them and really stepped up when Dominique Easley went down, was Akeem Hicks. Do you think he's priced himself out of New England, or do you think he's back in Foxborough?
He is the classic Mark Anderson. Priced himself out of New England. Listen, 325-pound guys who can rush the passer and stop the run, they don't grow on trees. This is a guy who came in here, much like Akeem Ayers last year, really brought up his stock, and I think the Patriots look at him and say, you know what, thanks a lot, we appreciate it. We stole you from the New Orleans Saints for Michael Humanawinui. They expect Malcolm Brown to get better. They expect Dominic Easley to recover from his knee injury and get up. They, of course, could bring back Alan Branch. So I don't think he's back. I'd love to see him back because he was a great rotation guy, made plays when he had to make plays, but I think he might have priced himself out of the market. This is a guy who could be pricing himself in the $5 to $6 million range come the offseason.
More than likely, he's following in the footsteps of Mark Anderson, Akeem Ayers, etc., Jonathan Casillas. But at the same time, Jeff, the Patriots can create significant financial flexibility this offseason, and between making moves such as extending Jabal Sheard, such as reaching new deals with Dante Hightower and Jamie Collins, parting ways with Marcus Cannon, they could create enough financial flexibility to bring Akeem Hicks back, especially if he doesn't go for top dollar. So I'm not going to rule it out, but I am with you that more likely than not, he has priced himself out of New England, which is unfortunate because of how well he played and the fact that it's going to put more pressure on Dominic Easley to not end a third straight season on injured reserve. But we'll see how it plays out and where Hicks ends up, and if he does leave, who the Patriots target as a potential replacement. Jeff, now we're going to talk about your favorite position, the running backs. It's New England's biggest need entering the offseason. They have one of their own as a free agent in LeGarrette Blount. State your case for him being back or leaving.
You know what? He's still fairly young. Doesn't have a lot of tread on the tire, but I don't know if he was injured most of the season or what, but he just didn't have the drive. He didn't drop that shoulder and really run through people like he did in 2013 and 2014 in the second half. I like LeGarrette Blount. I know, one of our buddies, Sam Pericolo, absolutely hates him. But I personally like LeGarrette Blount. He's back if he's willing to take, $1.5–2 million a year. But I don't see him back. I think the Patriots need to go in a different direction, whether that's free agency or whether that's through the draft. But they do need that back that they can hand the ball off to. And I just feel that LeGarrette Blount was a nice big back. But one thing about LeGarrette Blount that kind of stunk with him is when he's out on the field, he's not going to catch the ball. And the time the Patriots use, the running back, the big back, and then the passing back. But there have been times where, guys like Stephen Ridley was that big back, and he could catch the ball. Antoine Smith didn't have huge numbers catching the ball, but he could run between the tackles and catch the ball. Same could be said with Corey Dillon, and to a lesser extent, Lawrence Maroney, who was kind of a bust, but in 2007 he was good going down the stretch, could run the ball and catch the ball. You didn't have to worry and say, oh, well, they know it's a runner, they know it's a pass.
LeGarrette Blount got better as the season went on, Jeff, and he actually, it's unfortunate, had his best game against Houston, which is the game where he got injured and ended his season. But at the same time, I don't think that he would have made enough of a difference against Denver. He didn't in 2013 in the AFC Championship game when they needed him, and he failed to deliver. So I think that the Patriots, with how much a smack in the face it was, this AFC Championship, that they need to improve their running game. They need to upgrade the power running back position. I think they look to do just that in the offseason. And that actually brings us to our next segment, which is probable, possible, or unlikely. We're going to strictly be looking at offensive free agents. We're going to start with the running backs. We're going to start with the biggest one on the board, Matt Forte.
Oh, I would have a Patsgasm and a half if the Patriots signed Matt Forte. He'd be the perfect running back for the New England Patriots system. This is a guy who caught almost 100 balls, or caught over 100 balls. He's a guy who can run in between the tackles. He's got speed to the outside. Sure, he's getting older at 29, 30 years old. It's plausible, probably not possible, but I keep looking at it, and, the Patriots always do such a good job of building that middle half of the roster and just, going and it showed this year with all the injuries that they were able to bring stuff in and still go 12-4. But with a soon-to-be 39-year-old quarterback, Bill Belichick, soon to be 66 years old, you got to wonder, is there going to be a time where they just say F it and just throw the money against the wall and go for it? And sign these guys to big deals, 1 or 2 year deals for these older veterans, and just say, let's go for it. Obviously, they got 16 years of success of doing it their own way, so I highly doubt that they do it. But if I'm going to throw some money and say, let's go for it, give me Matt Forte.
While I am leaning towards unlikely, Jeff, I'm going to point out what you mentioned on Inside the Hoodie last week, and that is after the off seasons where New England has lost in the playoffs to Peyton Manning, they've made significant moves, whether it be loading up in 07 with Moss, Welker, Adalius Thomas, Dante Stallworth, whether it be, you name it, you can go back and look. After they lost in 2013, they bring back Julian Edelman. They bring in Brandon LaFell. They signed Darrelle Revis and Brandon Browner. So history indicates that they might be willing to make a big splurge. There's also the fact that the Patriots have positioned themselves financially to make a significant free agent signing. So those two factors do point in the direction of making this more realistic than some might think. But ultimately, it boils down to whether or not Matt Forte, he's 30 years old, he'll turn 31 in December, is willing to take that discount the Patriots often ask of veteran players in order to come pursue a championship ring. And listen, maybe he agrees to do that for another team for one reason or another. But I ultimately think that the Patriots are going to try and sell him on coming to Foxborough. We'll see how successful they are. If they don't want to spend that much money, they could perhaps target Alfred Morris. Jeff, do you see the former Redskins running back as probable, possible, or unlikely?
Another possible guy for me. Definitely going to give a look at him. He's a big back, who can run between the tackles, has a little bit of ability to catch the football. And here's the key. They've seen him up close in practices, in those joint practices. And we've seen the Patriots go out and bring in some of these guys that they've had joint practices with. You saw them what they did with Akeem Hicks, bringing him in here. They had joint practices with the Buccaneers. You saw them bring in Chris Jones. You saw them bring in Aqib Talib. You go back to the time when they had joint practices with the Eagles. Bradley Fletcher was a guy who came in here. Also, Demarius Johnson, the wide receiver who stuck around for about 2 or 3 weeks with the Patriots this year. So this is a guy that they've seen him practice. They know what he's all about. So if they like him, they know what he's about, they'll bring him in. I would like to see him. Of course, you know me. I want to see them hand the ball off on 3rd and 2 when you need 2 yards. Hand the ball off to that big guy. Get tough, get rough, get physical, and not be this finesse offense that, it doesn't always get it done in the playoffs.
Jeff, you mentioned his build. He's 5'10", 224, nice sturdy frame, low center of gravity. I'm going to go to his availability. Hasn't missed a game his entire career. Last season, he averaged 3.7 yards per carry. That's just fine in New England. That's really all you need. And as long as he can be reliable against the better run defenses so that they don't have to enter a game in the playoffs knowing that they're going to punt it when it comes to running the football and establishing a ground game, as long as he can have success in those environments, I'm all for bringing in Alfred Morris, who doesn't figure to be all that expensive. Someone who figures to be just a bit pricier. And I say that with all the amount of insincerity that I possibly can. Probable, possible, unlikely, Jeff. Doug Martin, what's your stance?
Oh, the mighty hamster. Whatever they call that guy.
Hamster.
The muscle hamster, man. I would love Doug Martin. But you know what? If you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, why are you ever going to let this guy walk? I mean, that's the big thing. He's got to be available. And why would you let this guy walk? I could see the Redskins moving on from Alfred Morris because they have, Jones. They have some other players that go there. But, Doug Martin would, man, he would be awesome in this offense. But impossible. Not going to happen.
Impossible. If he leaves Tampa Bay, it's because of a big contract, and that's not coming from the Patriots. So if Doug Martin is not in a Bucs jersey, he won't be in a Patriots jersey either. I'm quite confident in that. Clearly you are too. A value, a bargain free agent they could get, Jeff, is Dolphins running back Lamar Miller, who he's played well against the Patriots and really emerged this season. Do you think he is a possible candidate to join the New England Patriots?
Very possible candidate to join New England Patriots. One, you already mentioned it. The fact that he's had big games against the Patriots. Patriots do that. They bring in guys that have had big games. Right off the top of my head, two guys. Wes Welker had big games against the New England Patriots when he was with the Dolphins. And Scott Chandler had big games against the Patriots when he was in the Dolphins. I mean, they hit huge on Welker. Struck out big time on Scott Chandler. So you have this guy in Lamar Miller, and for some reason or another, the Dolphins just don't love to use him. He would fit perfectly in a running back by committee thing here in New England. The Patriots would use him. They'd find a role for him. Just imagine what they could do with Miller, James White, and Dion Lewis as a three-man tandem. They could do a lot of things, and with the three of them on the field, you really wouldn't know whether it would be run or pass or play action. I would love to see him here. Whether they do it or not is another thing, but I say it is definitely possible.
Yeah, it is a bit of a head-scratcher that Lamar Miller plays all 16 games this season, third year in a row, by the way, and despite being on a Dolphins team that was going through a bit of an identity crisis on offense, gets less than 200 carries, but still proved to be very effective, averaging 4.5 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns, and also he can contribute in the passing game as well. You talked about that being one of the reasons that you're not so keen on LeGarrette Blount coming back. But Lamar Miller, 47 catches, 57 targets for 397 yards and 8.4 yards per catch. So he can contribute in more facets than just on the ground. And that's why he intrigues me, not to mention the price tag. Another Dolphin who they could target, Jeff, is Rashard Matthews, who also fits the bill for players that have performed well against the Patriots defense. Do you think he is a possible candidate to join the New England receiving corps, especially if they are to move on from Brandon LaFell?
Could be, but another guy that he's a bigger guy, catches the ball well, but they've had such a hard time bringing in free agents that in the wide receiver game that do well. One guy I'm thinking about for wide receivers is a former Dolphin in Givens. Of course, he ended up on the injured reserve this year. Patriots could bring him back instead of Matthews, so there could be another guy to go there. So I'm going to say non-plausible as far as Rashard Matthews goes.
Interesting. Yeah, Brandon Gibson is another candidate as well. Although I feel like it was last season or never for Brandon Gibson and being a member of the Patriots roster. So as unfortunate as it was, because he has versatility and he was playing well, he came in with a level of familiarity with the offense from working with Josh McDaniels in the past. It was just very unfortunate, especially for him at that age and that stage of his career, to go down with a knee injury, but it happens, and I think the Patriots don't look to him to be the guy. Perhaps they do look for a veteran free agent, though, Jeff. Might Anquan Boldin be joining the New England Patriots next season?
Pass, Bobby. Pass, and pass. His better days are behind him. You know what? If you told me Anquan Boldin in 2012, 2013, yeah, I would have liked that. Better days are behind him. I don't want anything to do with Anquan Boldin. He's slow. He can't get as open as much as he could anymore. Yeah, pass.
Interesting. I do like the element of toughness that Anquan Boldin would bring to the Patriots offense. We talk about them needing that ability to fight, to be able to get open when you're being jammed at the line of scrimmage. Boldin would bring that. He'd bring veteran leadership as well. Not that they lack it, but how much of that can you really have? However, like you said, declining production, even with the bad quarterbacks at factor, it just seems like a player who at 35 years old, going to be 36 in October, might not be the best move. So we are in agreement that Anquan Boldin doesn't have all that much appeal to him, even with the fact that he matches some of the Patriots' needs at the receiver position. Some players from Cincinnati, Jeff, who check off all the boxes are Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones, both of them 6'2", versatile, They bring speed on the perimeter, which the Patriots sorely lack. Do you think either one of them could be a realistic candidate to join New England?
I think Marvin Jones is going to be a little too expensive for the New England Patriots. Mohamed Sanu, Rutgers, I like him. I like him a lot. You know what? Sanu could be a very good wide receiver here, although he's going to have to change up that number because he can't be number 12 in New England.
Yeah, he definitely would have to find a new one, but given that he's a Rutgers product, I'm sure he would get first priority in finding one of the available numbers. I like both those receivers. They check a lot of the boxes off. Sanu even checks Rutgers off. But Jeff, I can't get on board with giving up on Brandon LaFell at
He's a bum.
such a cheap cap hit to go for Mohamed Sanu or Marvin Jones. Even if that's an upgrade, I don't think it's significant enough of an upgrade to risk it not being an upgrade. Brandon LaFell was everything
has pictures of you naked with a monkey.
I don't want to talk about my time with that monkey. I miss him. But anyways, Jeff, Brandon LaFell that first season in New England, I don't think that was the outlier for his time with the Patriots. I think this season is the one that you have to look at and say, okay, what really happened here? And it's clear that it was injuries. It's clear that the offensive line had a role in his downfall this season.
It's clear that he stopped trying.
He does cut some routes off, and that's a negative against JoJo, but I think it's worth it to bring Brandon LaFell back. He's got familiarity and a comfort level with Brady and the offense. He helped you win a Super Bowl. No one was complaining then. I think last season had more to do with injuries than anything else. So I say bring him back, see if he can stay healthy and what type of production you can get out of him. Not to mention that you would still have Keyshawn Martin waiting in the wings in case that decision doesn't pay off. But I think it would. Jeff, a decision that did not pay off was to sign Scott Chandler. It seems likely that the Patriots are going to part ways with him rather than bringing him back for a second stint in Foxborough. So looking at available free agent tight ends, first let's look over in Indianapolis, where both Dwayne Allen and Coby Fleener are free agents. Do you think that the Patriots try and lure either one of them to Foxborough?
I want nothing to do with Coby Fleener. Nothing to do with him at all. He doesn't do anything for me. Some people look at him and go, "Ooh, hey, there's that move tight end. There's that next Aaron Hernandez." He just does nothing for me. Dwayne Allen, on the other hand, does something for me. He gives me a little, tightness in the pants. I like him. I like him a lot. I mean, you look at him and he can block, he can catch, he can run. He's big. He could help the Patriots develop a running game, even though Josh McDaniels would never hand it off. You could have Barry Sanders and probably wouldn't hand it off. But no,
had to get his shot at McDaniels in.
Had McDoofus, baby, McDoofus all day long.
Almost got through the episode without you breaking out the bow and arrow and slinging Josh McDaniels down. It's funny because Dwayne Allen is a more well-rounded tight end, but I think that Coby Fleener is likely to command more money on the market. And listen, for all we know, the Colts are determined to bring both of them back. But here, as we haven't even entered free agency yet, and you look at the possibility of one of them moving on, I'm with you. The guy I would target is Dwayne Allen. For all the reasons you mentioned, he would be a tremendous compliment to Gronkowski. He also wouldn't tip your hand in what you're doing when you go to those two tight end formations. So I think Dwayne Allen makes a lot of sense and probably wouldn't cost all that much money. However, Jeff, there is a player who, while he figures to be more expensive, if they can lure Ladarius Green out of San Diego, perfect fit for New England's offense. Just dream scenario would be signing him to pair with Gronkowski. He's 6'6", 240, knows how to use his frame in order to get open, good quickness for his size, another red zone target with size. He's entering the prime of his career. Jeff, are you going to shoot my dreams down and say there's no way this happens, or are you on board with this one?
There's no way that this happens. No way whatsoever. First of all, the San Diego for another year Chargers, they're going to want to sell tickets when they get to LA because that's where they're going. We both know they're going to LA.
Absolutely.
They're going to want to sell tickets. Antonio Gates is getting up there in years. You got to keep Green. He's phenomenal player. As much as I'd love to see him in the New England Patriots, that's about as likely as Calvin Johnson showing up here.
Yeah, it would be inexcusable for San Diego to not at the very least franchise tag Ladarius Green and hold on to him for another season. So one can dream, but even I don't believe it's going to happen. Another player, Jeff, who might fit that same line of thought is Kelechi Osemele. He's easily the best guard available on the market, and there are some other good ones available, but he's first, and then there's a significant gap between everyone else who's available. Again, another player entering the prime of his career. He's arguably the best run-blocking guard in the National Football League. He's also effective in the passing game. What say you, Mr. Kane?
No, I can't pronounce the name. There's
You
a
can't
certain
pronounce a
thing that
lot of
goes
names.
out there.
You couldn't get Le'Veon Bell, so I'm not sure if that's justifiable.
It is very justifiable because I got Michael Humanauanui every single time I try. Okay? Le'Veon Bell could come to the Patriots now because I learned how to pronounce his name. But this other guy you just said, no, don't need a guard. We're good. We're good. I honestly, I really think that the Patriots are okay at guard because I believe that Shaq Mason, Trey Jackson, and Josh Klein are all going to have another season in the offseason program and be very good. You also have David Andrews, this rookie free agent center, who played very well, who can move in at center, allowing Brian Stork to move out to guard if need be. So I don't think the Patriots are going to throw a lot of money at the offensive line position, especially at the interior guard position. If you go back and you look at the New England Patriots throughout Bill Belichick's tenure, you got the guards that they've brought in. They spent a little bit of money on Mike Compton, but I mean they had Joe Andruzzi, which they picked up off the scrap heap in 2000. Salimi Asala that they picked up off the scrap heap
That
in
name
2000.
you get right? Are you kidding me?
That one's embedded into my head. You look at some of the guys that they've brought in. They brought in a college wrestler and made him into an all-pro guard. Dan Carnley, the same thing. Ryan Wendell. Really the only big-time free agent they've ever brought in at guard was Brian Waters, and he was on his last legs, but played a phenomenal season in 2011. They don't go out and spend money on guards. The one outlier being drafting Logan Mankins at number 32 in the 2004 draft, or 2005 draft, actually.
And Jeff, let's not forget, they weren't exactly lining up to pay Logan Mankins. Even that was a bit of a struggle. Mankins had to hold out, miss the first 10
games
of the season. And then, week 11, after not playing the first 10, he's out there on the field starting, and you wouldn't have known that he hadn't played for the entire season up until that point based on his performance in week 11. So he was worth the money, and then they decided to move on from him last season, and people were heavily critical of that, but it also turned out to be the right decision. Osemele, I know that a lot of Patriots fans look to an area of weakness when it gets exposed in the playoffs and say, we got to spend big, and they start looking at the top names on the free agent market. Osemele is not the answer here. It's about continuity and development, just like you said, with Mason, who was your best offensive lineman against the Broncos, with Trey Jackson, who was not healthy for the game, with Josh Klein, who had a terrific season, easily the best of his career, but once he got hurt against Philadelphia, was never quite the same player. I do think they could stand to add a veteran to that mix, but I don't even think that is coming externally. I think they're going to re-sign Ryan Wendell for another season, and that way you have another guard in the mix. And then also, like you said, there are going to be times where they may feel it's best to move Brian Stork over to one of the guard positions. So there's plenty there internally. I don't think they go out to look and add someone, especially not in that price range. Jeff, we've looked enough at the Patriots, at their internal needs, their external needs, what decisions they're going to have to make, who might be replacing whom on the coaching staff. It's time to look at the big game on Sunday, Super Bowl 50. We conclude tonight's program by giving our predictions. Let's start with you, Mr. Kane.
Denver Broncos, Super Bowl 50 champions. They are winning this game 24-20. I don't know how. I don't know why. They're winning the game. They're winning this football game.
Jeff, I understand where you're coming from. There's a part of me that feels the same way. I can't allow myself to get carried away with it. Carolina is the better football team. It's been a magical season for them. Cam Newton, your regular season MVP. I think he's also going to be your Super Bowl 50 MVP, and that this dream season for the Panthers culminates with a Super Bowl victory on Sunday. That defense is the best in football. Denver has a great one too, but it's not as good as Carolina's. And unlike the Patriots, the Panthers have an outstanding offensive line, also might be the best unit in football. So I'm going with the Panthers to beat the Broncos. I know there's that feeling of Denver shouldn't have beat the Patriots, but they found a way. They got it done. Who would have thought that Peyton Manning would be back in the Super Bowl? Here he is. That's a Hollywood story right there for him to go out on top and get a second ring. I just don't think it happens. I think Carolina is the better football team. For as great a story as that would be about Peyton Manning, seeing Cam Newton and his maturation process, seeing how special a year it's been for the Panthers, I think they're your Super Bowl champions. That wraps up tonight's program. Be sure to join us next week on Inside the Hoodie. We'll return to our normal time slot, Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you then. We'll see which one of us, Jeff or myself, got their Super Bowl prediction correct. Until then, I'm Bobby Kravitsky, signing off. Have a good night, everybody.